Okay, I think we can start. Boker Tov, everybody. Welcome. I guess it's last week's shir. We were early. We were in Israel, so we didn't do on the Siddur. So it's been a couple of weeks, and we finished off the bracha of the Kabba Shofar and the ingathering of the exiles. And I just sort of mentioned the beginning for 30 seconds. We'll start now. Hasheeva Shofteinu Karishona, the restoration of justice. That is the next prayer. As we mentioned, the first six middle brachot are personal things, health and wisdom and forgiveness, and the second set of six blessings is national ideas, rest and gathering of the exiles, rebuilding of Jerusalem, judgment, etc. And then we assumed that the 13th bracha of Shomei Tfilah is sort of a summary that which should all be, that our tefillot should all be accepted. And we explained a few weeks ago that some explain very fascinatingly, no, that Shomei Tefillah, it's only after we unite and come together and set up a justice system and rebuild Jerusalem, only then will God hear our tefillot. Like it says in Megillat Eicha, that one of the punishments or the results of what happened of the exile is Shatam Tvilati, God has sort of sealed our prayers. Our prayers don't reach heaven. There is such a concept that our tefillot are not really heard anymore. The Gemara says that the cries of people are heard, but not the tefillot. And they distinguish between the prayer of an individual and prayer of a community. Communities always heard more, and we've explained many times that the main reason we daven with the minyan has nothing to do with Baruch and Kaddish and Kedusha and all those things that you can only say with the minyan. The main reason we daven with the minyan is because our tefillot are heard better. And Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, are supposed to come together in prayer, and therefore, I know this is a little bit radical, but there's really no difference between a man and a woman. And we know when it comes to prayer, men and women are pretty much equal. I know it looks very unequal because we don't let a woman become a chazanit, whatever. But in terms of the obligation to prayer, the Gemara says tefillah is rachamim, tefillah is mercy. Women need mercy just as much as men, and tefillah is not really a time-bound mitzvah. It's a time-bound in a rabbinic level. The rabbis say we should daven at specific time, but especially taking view of the Rambam and the calling you can daven whenever you want. Prayer is, of course, 24/7. And the Rambam says people used to pray as often as they wanted, when they wanted. So it's not, but even if it would be a time-bound mitzvah, it wouldn't matter. This would be an exception to the rule. So in theory, a woman should daven with the minyan too. But okay, sometimes it's hard. So sometimes it's hard for the men to daven with the minyan. That notion that the key notion is that our tefillot are heard much more when we daven with the minyan. By the way, talking about a chazan and davening, I just have to mention the last week I was in Yerushalayim, had the zchut to be in Yerushalayim for Shabbos. So Shabbos Mevarchim. So I went to daven at Yeshurun, and the center of town on King George. I'm sure many of you know of the synagogue, and I don't know what's called, Yeshurun Central Synagogue or something. I don't know the official name. I think it's a German, originally a German shul. So they have a new chazan. Nissan Saul. I don't know if some of you heard of him. So he apparently he lives in America, but he comes to Israel 6, 7 times a year and comes Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So I knew he was davening. I didn't know he came to the choir. I had to leave after 3.5 hours, and they weren't finished yet. It was like a 4 hour davening. So as my son said, he doesn't have to go to shul this week. He stayed in shul twice as long last week, so made up. But it was really, I found it a beautiful davening. It was really, and what was actually quite, I found very interesting is the amount of repetition of words. They all styled, the Chazanim all used to repeat words. They had a lot of repetition of words. It was also, and okay, whatever. I'm not here to discuss that, but it was really, I found it extremely beautiful. It's a beautiful voice, and with the choir, and they sang every little piece. And we were eating out for lunch, and who thinks there's going to be a 4 hour davening? And somebody actually came later and said he did another piece after we left, whatever it is. But was also interesting was the cross section of people. people who were there. People who like Chasanu said, there were people in Streimlach and everything. It was across, was arranged. When I walked into shul at 8:15, which is when they start, so I could barely get a seat. I don't know if you've been to shul. I don't know how many seats there are. There are a lot of seats, 500, 600 seats in the men's section, and it was basically packed at 8:15. Anyways, that's just an aside talking on Chazanut and Tefillah and connecting to last week. Okay. So let's get started with the bracha. Hasheeva Shofteinu Karishona v'Yotzeinu K'vatchila. So Marty, I think I saw you here before. Asked me already last week, why does it say, or 2 weeks ago, Karishona Katchila? So that's not so simple. We'll discuss in a few minutes, I hope. But let's discuss. Basically, this is a prayer for the restoration of justice. Hasheeva Shofteinu Karishona. God, bring us our shoftim, our judges, like in the beginning, Karishona v'Yotzenu, and our advisors, Kivatchila. Also, it's basically, you can say on a very simple level, it's a poetic license, poetic repetition. Hasheeva Shofteinu Karishona v'Yotzenu basically means the same thing. Of course, people are going to look for the differences, but it's return. We should have justice like we used to have. So we say it in two ways. Hasheeva Shofteinu Karishona. Our judges should come back, and Yotzenu, those who advise us what to do, also kivakila. So I'll just start with what the commentators don't really talk about. Well, what this in many ways is a prayer for the restoration of the Sanhedrin. It's much more than that, but it's also a prayer for the restoration of the Sanhedrin. Why don't we have a Sanhedrin anymore? By the way. Like why don't we have what was the role of a Sanhedrin? Anybody want to tell me?
Something to do with smicha
now.
I'm sorry. Yeah, has to do with smicha, right? What does it have to do with smicha? So we don't have smicha anymore. Real smicha. It's all the rabbis, all the big joke. Okay, that's a little bit harsh to put it, but that's we don't have real smicha. We have a teaching certificate. That's what smicha is. Heter hora'ah, the permission to teach. And the Gemara says one of the key conditions. I mean, it's fascinating. It's a sugya in Sanhedrin. We're not going to go through the whole thing now, but a little bit. One of the key components in order to get smicha is to be a good teacher. Have good pedagogical skills, right? We think, everybody knows, you can have great scholars who can't teach. I'm sure many of you went to courses in university where you had some top scholar, but they were lousy teachers. And some of them aren't interested in teaching. They want to do research and do their own things. But because the role of a teacher, of the reason you get smicha is to teach Torah. So if you teach Torah, you have to speak very clearly. So the Talmud says those who don't speak clearly and distinctly and etc. Cannot get smicha. That's I would say in many ways even more important than how much you know. You don't have to know. I mean, whatever. Obviously, we need people who are knowledgeable, but to teach in a high school, how much do you have to know? You have to know more than the kids know. Believe me, that's not so hard. But the main role of smicha day is what we call het Torah, the permission to teach. You have to be a good teacher. You have to know things too. The Gemara says that Rav spent 18 months on a farm. Because we don't have this anymore, because the laws of Bechor, a firstborn animal, have to be sacrificed, but if it has a blemish, then the laws are different. So to learn what's a blemish of an animal, spend 18 months. Can you imagine that? But obviously that's idea. You want to rule on medical ethics, maybe you should go to medical school. You want to be a Rav to Paskin Shalas, and that's I don't mean that as a joke at all. Somebody like Avram Steinberg, who was the editor of Encyclopedia Talmudit and one of the world's experts on Jewish medical ethics, he's a doctor. And Eddie Reichman, all the top people who write articles, they went to medical school. How else can you Paskin a Shaila? Rabbi Tendler used to talk about that all the time. He had a PhD in biology. What right does somebody who doesn't have an advanced degree in science have to issue rulings? So of course he would talk to his father-in-law, Rav Moshe, and give him the science, so he could issue rulings. But you have to have a familiarity with the science. It's better to have gone to medical school. It's well known, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who, as far as I know, and I'm sure did not go to university, but my understanding was that he had access to some of the top professors at Hebrew University. And before he wrote a lot on electricity and stuff, and my understanding is he had professors of physics who sat down with him. He was obviously brilliant, and they taught him physics. And he probably asked him what books he should read. Probably read books. I don't know exactly what happened. And he met with him, but obviously you can't. So Rob spent 18 months on a farm. Can you imagine 18 months on a farm before he would issue rulings? That's Hasheeva, Shofteinu, Karishonah. These are the type of judges we want to have. It's a lot of work, right? There's a difference between there are different levels, but okay, so we don't have but we don't have real smicha anymore. So we have a teaching certificate, so to speak. And why don't we have real smicha anymore? Why can't we give people smicha? Whatever you want to call smicha, rabbinic ordination. That's like a modern term. I don't know. Why don't we, like what Moshe did to Yoshua? He installed him.
Chain was broken.
The chain was broken, and so what? Who cares?
It has to be from teacher to student to student to student.
Right. So that's the assumption. It has to be teachers. So that why? That's actually I don't know if I have a good answer to that question. Right. I mean, the idea that smicha has to be given person to person. Somehow it has to be an unbroken chain. It's very nice, an unbroken chain. I don't know why is that so important.
Consistency.
I'm sorry.
Consistency.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe I mean that's so. So what happens now? So we can never have smicha again. That's it. We'll never ever have a Sanhedrin again. That's it. Finished. The Romans, they killed Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, I think, was the last person to give smicha. And we read on the keynote on Tisha B'Av, the rabbis put 300 spears in his body. The Romans began, I said many times, if the Romans would have understood what Torah Shabbal Peh was, what Mishnah is, they would have never agreed to Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai said, you can have Yerushalayim. We can live without Jerusalem. It's also an important, very important idea. We can live without Jerusalem. Let us go to Yavne. We'll sit there at the Rome. Don't go to Yavne. Who the hell cares? Go to Yavne. A bunch of old rabbis are going to sit there in Yavne. Had the Romans understood that Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai restored Judaism and saved Judaism, made it stronger and rebuilt it better and greater through the Mishnah and Rabbi Gamliel and and all the great sages of Yavne, they would have never agreed to that deal. They thought it would disappear, like today. If Ben Gurion would have understood what the Haredim would have turned into, he would have never agreed. They would have never agreed to make such deals. But people think they know the future. They never know the future. But the smicha continued long a little bit later. The Romans wised up, so to speak, and then they banned the giving of smicha at the penalty of death. And one of the 10 martyrs, Asur HaRigamachad, is Rav Yehuda ben Baba, and he was the one who gave smicha. That's it. So finished. We don't have smicha. And what does it mean if you don't have smicha? If you don't have smicha, you can no longer reinterpret the Torah. What it means to have smicha is you're allowed to do what they do in the Gemara. Kol malacha lo tasu, don't do malacha on Shabbos. We're going to redefine what malacha means. They can't make. I mean, it's a very broad topic. I mean, we did institute Hanukkah. No, that's the question when they institute. That was probably after Red. We can't really institute new takanot, new gzerot. We can't take away gzerot. Without a Sanhedrin, you're very limited. And of course, you cannot implement much of Jewish law. You can't have criminal law. We have no ability today. No rabbinic court has the ability to investigate the criminal case. We hand it over to civil authorities in America, wherever. A Beit Din has no right or authority. So is that it? That's it. We're finished. No more smicha. So what are we?
Rabbi Kelman, I heard that if a certain number of rabbis get together, they can start.
So let's do the famous Rambam. I've mentioned it before, but let's take a look at the Rambam inside and see what the Rambam says. Okay, let's take a look. And this is here we go, I hope. Okay. This is the Rambam, the Mishnah Torah Hilchot Sanhedrin, the laws of a Sanhedrin, chapter 4, halacha 11. So the Rambam talks about you can only give smicha in the land of Israel, by the way. There's no such thing as smicha outside the land of Israel. Where's that here? Yeah, ain't somchim zkenim b'chutz la'aretz. Can't have smicha Torah ki mitzion teitzei Torah udvar Hashem Yerushalayim, only in Israel. If you got smicha in the land of Israel, you could go teach Torah in Bavel. That's fine. But you can't give smicha outside the land of Israel. Very nice. Okay, so the Rambam writes in Halacha Yud Aleph, Hare shalo ayu be'eretz Yisrael ela somech echad. Okay, fine. Okay, one person can use smicha. Fine. Now the Rambam has this very interesting expression, which I understand he uses 9 times. And I was told I don't know them now where they are. 9 times the Rambam uses this expression, near inly, it appears to me. As we know, the Rambam never quotes his sources. That's one of the big criticisms of the Rambam. The Rambam amalgamates sources. The Rambam was such a brilliant person. He would often, one halacha would often consist of 6 different sources. They would weave together so beautifully, you think it's one source. But much of the commentaries on the Rambam is to figure out what the sources are, because sometimes they're not clear. And the commentaries, they have to scratch their head. Oh, there's a Yerushalmi here, there's a this, a Medrash, that. But every once in a while, the Rambam writes this expression, near inly, it appears to me, which means he has no source. I don't have a source. That's my gut. That's okay. A rabbi doesn't have to have a source for everything. And on this broadest scale, that's what a svara is. A svara is a logical argument. The Gemara will often say, "Svara hi lama likra." It's logical. Why do I need a verse in the Torah? If it's something logical, I don't need a source. It's pure brains. Use your brains. That's people, are very nervous. What do you mean? You don't have a source in the Chumash? I don't need a source for everything. We have brains. So the Svarahi Lama Likra. So if there's a verse to explain something I would have known, so Gemara says there must be something additional. The verse is telling me that I would not have thought of on my own. So the Rambam anyway writes, it appears to me, Nirim liadvarim she'im hismichu, shim hiskimu. Funny, it's very, very similar word, actually. Hiskimu, to agree, and hismichu, you just have to change a couple letters around. Kol hachachamim sheberetz Yisrael, limnot dayanim, all the sages in the land of Israel to appoint judges, they have the real McCoy. They're real rabbis. They can do penalties. Like when you steal money, you have to pay twice as much, or you steal a ox, or 5 times as much, whatever. They can then pass on smicha to other people. Im kain. Why are we so worried? Why is it so bad we don't see? It's very hard. It's very hard to get everybody to agree to do smicha. And then the Rambam been interesting legs. This thing needs a little bit of. We have to figure out exactly. I'm throwing out an idea out there. I don't exactly know. I'm not convinced. I wonder how they translate hechra. Requires resolution. Okay, I don't know if that's exactly the translation, but anyways, and it was based on this Rambam, of course, that in the 1500s, after the Spanish expulsion, when some of the leading authorities arrived in the land of Israel, people like Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, so when you sing L'Chadodi tonight, and people like the Al-Sheikh, and people like the Mabit, Rav Yosef Detrani, and maybe you haven't heard, maybe they're not quite as famous as Rav Yosef Karo, who is probably the most famous. They're in Sfat, and Rav Yaakov Beirav decides that based on this Rambam, we're going to reinstitute the smicha, and that's what he does. And 7 people get smicha, including Rav Yosef Kara, and that's what Dr. Twersky writes in his book on the Rambam. Believe that that's one of the reasons Rav Yosef Kara wrote a Shulchan Aruch. He now had the real McCoy. He was a real rabbi. He had real smicha. And now this is going to serve as a constitution of the new Jewish state. There are people coming to Israel in the 1500s. And that's it. Got smicha. Needless to say, that didn't seem to work very well. And there was a hue and outcry. And who are you? Chutzpah, who do you think you are to give smicha? And that was led by, I forget his first name, Ibn Habib, the father of the person, or the son of the person, I believe, who wrote the Ein Yaakov. The Ein Yaakov is a fantastic commentary that in many places in Europe, that's what people used to learn. Instead of learning Daf Yomi, before Daf Yomi, and people want to learn, they learned Ein Yaakov. Why do they learn Ein Yaakov? Balabatim, because Ein Yaakov removes all the halachic discussions. It's all the stories, the Agadot of the Gemara. It's more interesting, it's more fun, it's easier, and but a lot of them are not so simple to understand. I mean, it's not only stories, but it's a non-legal morals, ethics. So it was a very popular book. Every Jewish library should have one. I think there was a new edition put out recently, which I don't have. So, a new scholarly edition. So I believe it was his son who led the battle against smicha. And of course, he said, the fact that I'm against it means it can't work because the Rambam writes all the rabbis have to agree. And you see, not all the rabbis are agreeing. So it died out. And then, as we mentioned, this was revived. Oh, I should have brought the book. Do I have it here? Give me 1 second. Um, okay. I don't see it. I'll have to look for it. I'm sorry. I have a little book written by Yehuda Leib Maimon. Yehuda Leib Maimon was, anybody know who Yehuda Leib Maimon was? Anybody hear the name? I think his name was actually Fishman, right? Yocheved, what do you know about him?
Um, well, he was one of the early Zionists.
Correct. He was a great Torah scholar, and he was one of the early Zionists. Remember, he was the first minister of religion in 1948, and he wrote a 6-volume work, Sarei Hameah, fascinating book, fascinating stories. Sarei Hameah, the princes of the 100. In other words, the 100 is the year 1840 to 1940, 1240. We're 200, the Hebrew and English calendar are 240 years apart. So we're in the year 5785. Okay, in January will be 2025. So 785 at 240, you get 2025. So the year 1240 was the beginning of the 6th millennium, like hey tafshin pei hey, right? So the hey, the 6th millennium began, if we finish 5 millennium, and then so there's always 240-year difference. That's the Cherem de Rabbeinu Gershon, right? What people said was supposed to last 1,000 years is not really accurate. It was supposed to last till the end of the Elef Hashishi. The Rabbeinu Gershon lived in the 10th century, the end of the 10th century. He was 2 generations before Rashi. So he says polygamy. So he didn't know, things might change. Right now, we can't have polygamy. The Christians don't like it. We live in Christian society. It's not right, blah, blah, blah. So he put a cherem till the Elef Hashishi, till the year, not for 1,000 years, till 1240. For another 250 years, he put it on. Anyway, obviously was extended. So Rav Yehuda Leib Fishman, Yehuda Leib Maimon, wrote this book, Sarei Hameah, about his encounters. He was, I never met him, but he was, I get the impression from reading, he was like, he loved to schmooze, he was he loved and he loved to tell stories. He had a sense of humor and whatever. So he met many great rabbis, and he tells the stories about meeting them all. It's a very interesting book. Anyways, I don't know when he wrote it exactly, but he wrote a little pamphlet. He wasn't the Gadol Hador. He wasn't he wasn't the Rav Moshe Feinstein, but he was on the next level. He was on the level below of Torah scholars. And he wrote a book, Hitkatshut HaSanhedrin Bizman Hazeh. Now that we have a state of Israel, let's renew the Sanhedrin. And it's about a 75-page book. I first heard about it in the first year that I ever heard from Rav Aaron Lichtenstein when I was in the Gris Kollel. That's why you smicha. So they called it smicha, where it wasn't smicha. I don't have real smicha. But the why you smicha program, so-called smicha program. So when they spent the year in Gush, so Rav Lichtenstein gave us the Gemara Shir, and we learned Sanhedrin. And the first year, he quoted this book from Yehuda Leib Maimon, Hitkatshut Sanhedrin, and it was a plea. It was a plea to the leading rabbis that now that we have a state of Israel, let's have a Sanhedrin, let's be a real country. Who ever heard of a country without a Supreme Court? That when you live in Canada, the United States, sorry, we can't do criminal cases here. We can't do punishments. We can't make new laws. Well, what kind of a country is that? What kind of a Torah system is that? You throw away half the Torah. So he said, we need a Sanhedrin. We need a high court of justice. And he wrote arguing based on the Rambam why it should be allowed. So it's very nice. He wrote a book and it collects dust. Most people never heard of the book. Nobody was in favor of it. And Heichal Shlomo, where the great synagogue now, sort of next to the great synagogue, that was going to be the seat of the Sanhedrin. And the Brisker Rav put Heichal Shlomo into Cherem. I have a first cousin. I don't know if he still does. I don't know if it's still Cherem. He wouldn't walk into the building. Tova, you can figure out who it is. So we have who wouldn't walk into the building because Sincherem, the brisker Rav. Chutzpah, who did, and of course, I don't have to tell you, the secular people didn't want it either. We're going to have a rabbinic Supreme Court, so it went nowhere. But whatever it is something to think about. Okay, I don't want to spend the whole share on Hikachut HaSanhedrin, but it is a fascinating topic. And it really does. We do need a son. I mean, we do need something. So what we have today, other systems, but it's not a Sanhedrin. Listen, I was at my cousin's last week. He's a big Talmid Chacham. He really is. He was a lawyer in Baltimore for many years, but he's a serious Talmid Chacham. So he told me, I hope he won't be upset. I hope not. I'm not going to mention his name, but he wrote a 500-page book now. But when he sent it in to the publisher, he told them that he warned them about two things are in the book in case they don't want to publish it, in case they'll burn down the publishing house. And one of the things, and Taka didn't publish it, so he had to self-publish it. And he says one of the things he wrote was that the halacha doesn't know how to deal with commercial law. He says, he gave a whole example. Let's say somebody buys, you buy on the futures contract, you buy next year's thing, and then they ship it, and then the shipment is lost, and then who's responsible? So we have what's called, so you get and the guy doesn't know if he's going to pay. It's next year's thing, so you get a letter of credit at the bank, and then there's the UCC, that there are all these rules to do it. He says, all very nice, but in halacha, it's davar shelo bala olam, there's no kinyan, all these halakhic terminology. The halacha has no methodology to deal with this. So he was basically saying the halacha should allow Jews should lechatchila go to a secular court. It says all the prohibitions in the Talmud of going to a secular court were religious courts, archaot shel goyim, were idolatrous courts, pagan courts. But to go to the United States where they have commercial law, Dina de Machuta Dina, why not? So he understands that people will find that a little bit, controversial, but it makes perfect sense. The halacha, what's the halachas on corporations? There are no halachas on corporations. So people today, right, what should be the halacha? But if we had a Sanhedrin or we have some body, how do we update? Life has changed a lot since we last had a Sanhedrin. But that's the Sanhedrin keeps Judaism relevant. He was basically saying it's a lack of applying Torah to the real world by just sort of sitting here and the halacha, and you go to a dayan. He doesn't know what a letter of credit is. I don't even know if everybody here knows what a letter of credit is at the bank. And all these, how the stock market works. If you don't have another, by the way, it's the same thing. I think the RCA on their baiting, whenever they always have one of the judges has to be somebody who works in the field. So if there's a dispute, real estate dispute, so they need a real estate developer who adds one of the judges. Because if you don't understand the real estate business, in other words, when people enter into an agreement, two Jews in America, they expect to be bound by American law. They're not looking at the Choshen Mishpat, what's a kinyan, what's not. Okay, anyways, but that's one thing. So we have a lot of introduction here, but we do pray. Hasheeva Shofteinu Rishonah is really a prayer for the reinstitution of the Sanhedrin, and would be very nice, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, but What can I say? It's very hard. It was hard always to get the rabbis to agree to anything. I was talking this week in school. We started to say V'tein tal lumatar this week, right? As everybody knows. Of course, I started when I got to Israel, because Israel, they started in Zion Cheshvan, and I said it when I came back too. In other words, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even though they weren't saying it there, but once they started in Israel. But of course, the December 4th, we discussed a few weeks ago that the Rosh says you should say based on your country. So in Canada, you should say V'tein tal lumatar all year. Okay, but leaving that aside, the Rosh's view has not been accepted. So leaving that aside, the question is, why do we start on December 4th? We should start, the Talmud says we start 60 days after the fall equinox, which is what date? When are we supposed to say in V'tein tal lumatar? What's 60 days after the fall equinox? Somebody?
Number 21.
November 21. So why don't we say V'tein tal lumatar on November 21?
Because the inaccuracy of the calendar.
Because our calendar is inaccurate, because the Jewish calendar is based on the Julian calendar, that the calendar, Julius Caesar, that the calendar is 365 and a quarter days. Or in the Talmud, this is right to Shmuel's calendar. Shmuel, who was the great astronomist, right? Shmuel knew the stars like the streets of Naharda. I think that's the expression of the Gemara. He was a great scientist, and Shmuel's calculation, the Gemara has different calculation. I think the Gemara was aware that it's not 100% accurate, but like a lot of things, they want to round it off. It was the pre-scientific age. How much matzah do you have to eat? You have to eat a kizayit of matzah. You don't have to eat a zayit. You have to like an olive, approximately an olive. I won't get into how the olives are. We're not going there. But kizayit, in other words, I'm a low lugma. What's a low lugma that fills you drinking? It fills the side of your mouth. Everybody's
Equal.
different. How much is an amma between the elbow and the middle finger? Well, what kind of a ridiculous measurement is that? It's a ridiculous measurement for us, but in the time, the measurements weren't so exact. They weren't playing football, and it was fourth in inches, and you lost the Super Bowl because you got tackled, 1 inch before, 1 inch after. They didn't live like that. It was approximate, an amma, a tefach, as a handbreadth. They didn't talk in inches and meters and feet. It didn't matter. So the calendar's 365. So it's a few minutes wrong. Who cares? The problem is, as we all know, that begins to add up. And of course, as well known, in 1582, Pope Gregory chopped off 11 days of the calendar, October 4th to October 15th. I think I told you once. I told my class this week, right? I'm watching Jeopardy, which I haven't watched for a long time, ever since Alex Trebek died. I don't watch Jeopardy. I don't even know how to turn on our TV. But anyways, so they have, the answer is October 4th, October 15th, 1582. So I'm just watching. So I instinctively, I just said, what is a Seret Yemei Tshuva? Of course, I was wrong, but of course, it's Seret Yemei Tshuva. Rosh Hashanah was late that year, October 4th, October 15th. And of course, those were the days that Pope Gregory knocked off the calendar. You went to bed on October 4th, woke up on October 15th. But the problem is, or the halacha, Judaism didn't account for that. They didn't chop off. You didn't go on the 4th of Cheshvan and wake up on the 15th of Cheshvan. You woke up on the 5th of Cheshvan. So November 21st, all of a sudden became December 2nd. Okay, so why don't we say the Tain Telematar on December 2nd? Well, that's because the year 1600, because it's 3/4 of a day every 100 years. So 3/4 of a day every 100 years. So you have to add an extra day, or you have to miss an extra day 3 times every 400 years, more or less. So the years 17, 18, and 1900 did not have did have leap years. Did have leap year? No, did not have leap years. The year 1600, 2000, 2400 will be leap years, but the year 17, 18, if it's not divisible by 4, like the 400, so the year 1700 didn't have a leap year, even though it normally should, to adjust for the calendar. So December 2nd became December 3rd, and then December 3rd became December 4th. And then December 4th in 1900 became December 5th, the 3 days. So I'm pretty sure if you find the Siddur printed in the 1800s, it will say Saint Tain Telematar on December 4th. In the 1900s, you say in December 5th, and in 2100, you'll say in December 6th, and in 2200, you'll say it on December 7th. The problem is, pretty soon we'll start saying Tain Telematar in March or May, and Pesach is going to be in August. So that's a problem. That's a serious problem. So we're going to have to fix the calendar. So I mentioned when the Mishnah Berurah discusses it, he said that don't worry about it. By the time it becomes a real problem, the Mashiach will be here. I don't know. That's not such a great answer. I know we've been waiting a long time for the Mashiach. He hasn't come. I don't know. And until we have Hasheeva, Shofteinu, until we have honest judges that we'll get to now, I don't know how fast the Mashiach is coming. So that's a fast, but we're going to need all the rabbis to agree. And I shudder to think, honestly, I shudder to think what will happen when really Pesach, this year, Hanukkah is the first day. The first day of Hanukkah is on Christmas. I'm sure most people know. And you remember 5-6 years ago that Hanukkah was on Thanksgiving for the first time ever. Because for Hanukkah to be on Thanksgiving had to be like this year, Thanksgiving on November 28th. The fourth Thursday had to be November 28th, because that's the earliest Hanukkah could ever be. It had to be really early, and Thanksgiving's only been around for 200 years. I don't know when the first Thanksgiving. So it happened, I think it was the first or second time in history. And guess what? It's never going to happen again, because we've switched the day in our lifetime. 10 years ago, Hanukkah could be as early as November 28th, no more. Hanukkah can now, the earliest it could ever be is November 29th. So we can never have the overlap of Thanksgiving and Hanukkah anymore. So in our lifetime, we're not going to notice it, but in our great grandchildren, Hanukkah, it's going to start a real problem. And I shudder to think what's going to happen if the rabbis have to come to agree to fix the calendar because this one's going to observe Pesach. No, we can't fix it. We have no right to do this, and we just have to wait. So they'll observe Pesach 3 days later. And I've said it. I'm sure if you've been to enough of my classes, you've heard me say many, many times. All the fights we have: Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Humanist, whatever you want to call it, everything and in between and more. Thank God we all agree on the calendar. So we can be one people. As long as we have one calendar, we're one people. Once we have two calendars, the Karaites are not part of the Jewish people anymore because the Karaites didn't follow our calendar. They do Shavuos on Sunday. Once you change the calendar, you're no longer part of the Jewish people. So, and we had a near schism. This almost happened in the 10th century. In the year 922, a debate broke up between Rav Saadia Gaon, the famous Rav Saadia Gaon, the most famous of the Gaonim, in Bavel, and Ben Meir, the exilarch in land of Israel, who's much less famous. But and the calendar has to be fixed in Israel also. And they had a debate it's very technical debate, but the implication of the debate was that Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, was 2 days later. So for 2 years, 922 and 923, the Jews, I believe those were the 2 years, the Jews in Israel and Jews in Bavel celebrated Pesach on different days. Wow. Thank God that only lasted a couple of years, and Rav Saadia Gaon won. And it had to do with if the Molad is at after Chatzot on a Tuesday, it gets pushed off, and then Rosh Hashanah can't be on a Wednesday, so it got to be pushed off another day. So it's pushed off to Thursday, and exactly when the Molad, how do you calculate it? So there was a whole debate, and it threatened we wouldn't be the same people. Had that continued, the Jews in Israel, we would be another religion from the Jews who lived in Israel. Probably they would have died out. Because how many Jews live in Israel? They would have another religion only of Jews outside of Chutzarts. Anyway, let's get back here to the bracha. Hasheeva, Shofteinu, Karishona. Any questions, comments, criticism? No, nobody has any comments. Okay. All right. Hasheeva, Shofteinu, Karishona. What does that mean? Return our justice to beginning. So first of all, we should all point out, of course, that justice follows on redemption. The previous Tekabah Shofar Gadol, redeeming the people, the redemption can only happen through justice. Torah is dependent on justice, and we see that in 2 places in the Torah very strongly. And where are the 2 places in the Torah that it's very clear that without justice, you can throw out the rest of the Torah? Where do we see that? Twice in the Torah, at least. Besides, all the mitzvot in the Torah, to be honest, all those mitzvot, but tzedek tishpat amitecha.
Is it Avram arguing with God?
Yeah, so I'm not even talking about that. Yeah, true, of course. The fact that staka mishpat, melech ohev staka mishpat, I think that's what I mentioned 2 weeks ago. Staka mishpat is why God chose Abraham. The ending of the bracha, melech ohev staka mishpat. God, it says Bereshit 18:19. I'm not going to. We showed it before. I think Bereshit 18:19 that God is about to destroy Sodom. He says, "Hamechaseni mi Avram at Asher Can I hide from Avram? What I'm going to do? Avram's going to be a great nation. Avram's my partner. We're partners with God. We're the special partner. How can I hide from him? What I'm going to do? But he'll be a great nation. Ki yadati, because I know Leman Yitzaveh banav et bnei beito. He will command his household v'shamru derech Hashem. They will follow the path of God, lasot tzedakah umishpat, to do tzedakah, righteousness, and mishpat, and justice. That is why the Torah is black and white. That is why God shows us. That is the derech Hashem, the path of God. It's not keeping kosher or Shabbos there. It may be connected in some fashion, but the path of God, it's tzedakah umishpat, and that's because Abraham will teach his children that and his household. That is why God chose Abraham to become a great nation. That's what it says in the Torah. Right, but I'm talking, okay, that's true, but you see it, I was referring to 2 sort of the way the Torah is structured. The first, of course, is Yitro, that right before Matan Torah is the story of Yitro telling Jews, Napol, you're going to fall, you're going to fail. Moshe, you need justice here. And justice delayed is justice denied. And if you think you can do your own right, the people were waiting from morning to the evening, right? What's going on? Lineups, because Moshe is the only one giving justice. So that doesn't work. There's a halach of Inui Hadin. It's a big problem in our courts in the Western world, the backlog in courts, and cases get thrown out all the time. The judge says, no, 5 years later, I'm sorry. And you have armed robbers who go free because they didn't come to judge them early enough. So we have Inoy Adin, you're not allowed to delay judgment. Has to be chick-chock, 1 through 3. So that's Yitro. Before you can have Matan Torah, you need to have a justice system. I've mentioned a number of times. This is even more powerful if you take the position, which many commentaries do, that Yitro actually gave this advice after Mamad Har Sinai. When did Yitro come to meet Moshe? There's a debate. In the Torah, it's presented as if he came before Har Sinai, but some say he really came afterwards. Torah is not always in chronological order. So if that's the case, then it's even more powerful. Why did the Torah put it out of order to teach that? And the second one, I'll share with you.
Before,
sorry?
Maybe we got the din of a melech before we went into Eretz Yisrael. That
What do you mean? What we're saying? When we got the din of Melech,
electing a king who's supposed to support justice before.
Yeah, Melech. Yeah. Okay, no, of course there's all, but tzedek teared up there. Maybe I shouldn't have said 2 places because it's all over the place. But I'm saying at 2 momentous moments in Jewish history. I guess that's what I meant. I mean, all the law. 2 moments in Jewish history where there's this great things about to happen, and we interrupt this to bring you a special message. This ain't going to work unless you have a good justice system. So it's not going to work to have, you're not going to get the Torah. There cannot be the Torah given without a justice system. And the second time is you cannot enter the land of Israel without a justice system. And that will show you inside. That's the opening of Sefer Dvarim. And Moshe Rabbeinu, where are we going here? Deuteronomy 1. Okay, so Moshe says, okay, we were at Har Sinai. Where were we? That's he's speaking in the 40th year. Where is this? Hashem Charev is Har Sinai. Okay, God said, enough time. You've got the Torah. Time to go to the land of Israel. Come to the land of Israel. Here, I'll put it in, if I can find it, put it in Hebrew and English. Make it a little bit easier. Go to the land of Israel, Eretz Canaan, Halvanon, Narkadon, Harprat. I see, I give you the land of Israel. That's what Sefer Torah is about. Go inherit the land. Go inherit the land. And all of a sudden, Moshe says, you know what? I can't do this. I can't take them to the land of Israel. Why not? Because you're a lot of people. The Jewish people are a multitude of people, and you should grow. And like God promised Abraham, like the stars in heaven, right? It's too much, and you guys are troublesome. You're burdensome. Right? Moshe's complaining. Echa. This is one of the terms of Echa, and we always read this before Tisha B'av. So how do you solve the problem? By appointing judges. Oh, that's a good idea. I put it every thousands and hundreds, lower courts, higher courts, 50 for every 50 people, whatever. And then I commanded your judges to say, better judge ushvatatem tzedek, to judge judgment, lo takirum mishpat, don't show any favoritism. It doesn't matter a small case or a big case, don't be afraid of anybody. Judge has to be courageous. There's a lot of pressure. Right? You're carrying out God's work. Exactly. So in order, before we can enter the land of Israel, that's what Moshe is saying. We're about to go to Israel. No, but we can only go to Israel if we appoint judges. And basically what Moshe is saying, I can't do it on my own. I need judges. So what's Moshe saying? What's the role of Moshe Rabbeinu? The role of Moshe Rabbeinu is to administer justice. That's his main role. That's what it says in the Torah. I can't do it on my own. I need help. We're going to appoint justices. What do you mean? I'm the leader. I'm taking it to Israel. So we think of Moshe as our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu. It's true. But Moshe Rabbeinu was telling us that the way to get to Israel, what really my role is to make sure there is justice in the people. So that's what I meant. These 2 great historical events, the receiving of the Torah and the going to the land of Israel, are dependent on justice, which is why the Gemara's opinions, the Mefarshim say that it was through the corruption of the judges, what we know happened in the Second Temple period, that we lost Israel. That right, there are many reasons given, all kinds of reasons given. But so that's what we're praying for. Hasheeva Shofteinu Karishana. We had corrupt judges, right? Where does that come from? By the way, let's go back to our thesis that our prayer book is based on Tanakh, right? Where is this? Hasheeva Shofteinu Karishana. Return our judges like in the beginning. and our advisors, like at first, or really, where does that come from? Anybody? So it comes from the same place. It's the Haftorah for the Torah reading we just did. It's the Haftorah for Dvarim Aleph, and that's Yeshayahu. And we read this right before Tisha B'Av. Vashiva Shavtayich Harishana. This is where they changed the tune, right? The maftir for Shabbos Chazon, and then as if they do it properly, the person is doing maftir. When he gets to this pasuk, I think Vashiva Shavtayich Harishana. It sounds so much better. You've gone from the Eicha tune. So you see, this is it. It's copied basically word for word. And then, then you'll have a city of justice. And Kiryah, I know what Kiryah is like, is the town square, right? It's also another name for a city of Nemana. Nemana always is the reference to faith. So what does that mean? So actually, I think it's the Malbim says that the difference between a shofet and a yoetz. What is it? Again, I would assume it, like we said, it's poetic just license. In other words, they mean similar ideas, but again, the fact that they are different must mean there are certain differences. So what's the difference between a shofet and a yoetz? Right? I was in Israel because my daughter was graduating as a yoetz at halacha, a yoetz to give advice on halacha. Well, what's a shofet and what's a yoetz? So I don't know. So I mean, I don't know where they come up with this exactly, but the Malbim says a shofet is between man and man, which kind of that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says. Ushvatam bin ish lachiv, right? If you take a look at the pasuk, that's probably where he gets it from. So Moshe Rabbeinu says the role of the judge is lo takiru ishbat. No, where is it here? Shamoa ben Achechem, between the brothers, Ushvatam Tzedek. So he says a shofet deals with issues. Makes sense. When you go to court, you go to court. When you don't go to court to find out if you can eat on Yom Kippur because you're sick. You go to court when two people are fighting with each other. So a shofet is bein adam lechavero. A yoetz is bein adam l'makom. And it's interesting. He advises you, like when you use the yoetz, like sounds like an advisor, if that's what it really means, and that's how they translate it. So it means like I'm not telling you exactly what to do. I'm advising you what to do. That's Rav Soloveitchik. Many great poskim. They don't tell you what to do. They tell you this is what I think. This is look it up. If it applies to you, that's Rav Moshe Feinstein's introduction. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes in his introduction. People ask me questions, so I'm giving you what I think. If you should read it, it's unbelievable. This is what he writes. I mean, people unfortunately don't read this stuff. And he writes, if you agree with me, then do what I say. If you don't agree with me, I'm not the only rabbi. You don't have to agree with me and do what you want. So I don't know if was he writing this for any Tom, Dick, and Harry off the street or other rabbis. I've mentioned before, Rav Moshe often said that when the beautiful tshuva, when somebody asked him if he can give money to the Eruv in Manhattan, Rav Moshe felt the Eruv in Manhattan, the original one they built, on maybe now it's a different Eruv. The original Eruv was not good. Rav Moshe Feinstein felt he was machmir. He said not good, but other people said it was good. So somebody said they're at the shul, the people carrying the shul, they're having a fundraiser. Can I give money? They asked Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe says, of course you can give money. Oh, I think it's no good. If it's no good, can't give money to help people be a Machal Shabbos. I'm not the only rabbi in town. If the rabbi in your shul feels the Eruv is good, you daven in the shul, give money to the Eruv. It's like unbelievable. We don't have, that's Hasheeva Shavtayich Karishona. We need people like that today. It's not my way or the highway. The different rabbis. So that's a yoetz. The Malbim writes. The Malbim is always the one who distinguishes between two synonymous words. That's the specialty of the Malbim. Anytime you can think of two words and you're not sure what the difference, look in the Malbim. He's the one who always deals with it. Malbim was. Anybody know who the Malbim was when he lived? What his real name was? And now I hope I remember. The Malbim was an acronym. Mayor. Yechiel Michal ben Malbim. Mayor Levush.
Mayor Leibush, I think.
The Mayor Leibush, right? Ben Malbim, Beit Mem Malbim. I forget already. All right, I have to look it up. It's bad. I'm sorry, but that's what he's known. When did he live?
Like late 1800s.
Late 1800s. You know, he almost became chief rabbi of New York. Baruch Hashem, he lucked out and he didn't get the job, and they brought in Rav Yaakov Yosef and destroyed his life. But the Malbim was a great scholar. I heard a story. I don't like these stories, but they tell a story once. I don't know why. I'll repeat it anyways because I heard, but I don't go for these stories. It's just that he was once sitting in the Khatam Sofer seat. He was a young kid. He was 18, 19, and he went to, I guess he was in shul, maybe he didn't know, and he was sitting where the Khatam Sofer sits. And the Khatam Sofer walked in, and he realized, so he got up, and the Khatam Sofer said, no, shave, you can sit. And he interpreted that means you're going to sit in learning. You're not going to grow in learning anymore. That's it. You have to sit. And he decided, therefore, he's going to exercise in Tanakh, because the only real learning is Gemara. Tanakh is for women. It's not the real learning. That's I don't go for that. But that's a story that I heard in yeshiva. He was a great Talmud scholar too, but he's of course most famous, and he wrote very important commentary on the Chumash. I don't know how widely studied it is, but it's really quite beautiful. I haven't studied so much of it either myself, but it's really, that's one of his specialties, that he does distinguishing between various words. So that's what he says. So he says a shofet is a between man and man. That's and a yoetz is between man and God. And then he explains the shofet is to have, what's the pasuk? The pasuk is ir hatzedek. It's a shofet does ir hatzedek. Here we'll just go back for a second, and a yoetz does kiryan nemana. Right? If you go to Yeshayahu, so Hasheeva shotai karishana v'yotzai kavekla acharkein ir hatzedek is what a shofet does. There should be justice in the city. Nemana, I said, emunah always refers to faith in God. So the role of a yoetz is to get a kiryan emana, a religious city, and the role of a shofet is to get a city of justice. And obviously, you really can't have one. You can have justice without religion, but you can't have religion without justice. Can't have bein adam lemakom without bein adam lechaviro. You can have bein adam lechaviro without bein adam lemakom. So that's how the Malbim explains what the difference is between those two terms. Some of the other, what does the Vilna Gaon says? Yeah. I saw it just this morning. The Vilna Gaon explains, that a yoetz, he identifies yoetz as Moshe and Aaron. It's very interesting. And a shofet as David and Shlomo. The original, and he explains like this. What's the difference between Karishona and Kivat Chila? So what Hasheeva Karishona Kivat Chila is, again, it could be just poetic, but what's the difference between Karishona and Kivat Chila? So the Malbim, let's start with the Malbim. The Malbim explains Rishon means 1, 2, 3. Rishon means is the first, the second, the third. Kivat Chila means the beginning. In the beginning. The beginning doesn't have a second when it from the beginning, when it only happened once, then it's Kivat Chila. And Rishon means it happens many times. So he explains, I don't really understand this, but what he says is we had good judges. When Moshe Rabbeinu appointed judges, we used to have Karishona, and then we had bad judges. So we went first too. So now the third justice, we want to have good. But Kivat Chila, he says, I don't understand why. He said, when somebody gives bad advice, it's not advice. It doesn't count. It's not like we had advisors. We only have advisors. Kivat Chila, when we started to have good advisors. So I don't even know exactly where he gets this. The only thing I could say is, right, when a judge issues a corrupt, wrong ruling, it still stands. It's binding. We know judges are corrupted, and they, even, there's a lot of discussion, the Supreme Court, how the Supreme Court gets appointed, and are they judging what they're based on their political views or based on what they want? I don't have to tell you how that tore Israel apart, and it's a big issue in America because it's a big deal. Having proper shoftim, that's why we daven for it 3 times a day, is really, really important, and society can be destroyed over it. So he's saying, and if a shofet gives a terrible judgment, it's a terrible judgment. What can you do? Okay. Just one more thing, and then I'll get back to the Vilna Gaon. Shadal, that's Shlomo David Lutzato. He lived in Italy. The Lutzato family. Also, they're all related. I assume he's related to Rav Moshe Chaim, the Ramchal of the Mesilat Yesharim. I don't know the exact relation. Shadal was like what you call a frum maskil, a religious maskil. Marty Lection gave a series on talks on him. We have, if you want to look in our library. So he says a shofet are judges, and a yoetz is a political advisor. That it's the political realm. The shoftim are the people who deal with our justice system, and the yoetzim are the people who deal with our political system. That's it, the difference between a melech and a shofet. And we know in Judaism they have to be separated. The politics and the melech and the shofet have to be, or the shofet and the yoetz have to be very separated. That was the problem on Hanukkah time. That the Chashmonaim, the Ramban, has a scathing attack on the Chashmonaim. They were Kohanim, and it's very nice, what they did, but then it's really bad because they took over the political leadership, and Judaism believes really in separation of church and state, and we want our church, quote unquote, to be observant. But when you mix politics and religion, as I've quoted many times in the name of Jonathan Sachs, you get bad politics and worse religion. And religion is about honesty and refinement and integrity and helping people. And politics is about you stab people in the back and you get what you can and you step over everybody. It's about lies and corruption. That's what it is. It really is. As Rav Soloveitchik says, politics is kulo sheker, and Torah doesn't belong in politics. I mean that in all seriousness. That's one of the tragedies of the state of Israel, is how corrupt the religious politicians are across the board, and even if they're not corrupt, how they are perceived as corrupt by the population, and it lowers the status of Torah. So basically, a chilul Hashem. You don't have to agree with me, but that's it's really not good. We want it based, of course. We don't want we're not saying the government shouldn't give money to Jewish education, but once you mix in, you have religious parties, oh boy, and it's not good. And the Torah was very much afraid of that, and that's why we had the Kohanim and the Melech from Beit David, and the Kohen sticks in the Beit HaMikdash. Stay out of politics. It dirties Torah. Anyways, so that's how he explains. You have the political leaders, advisors, and then you have the shofet deal with the justice system. And that's, by the way, there's some who explain that's why the Hanukkah doesn't appear in the Mishnah at all. Hanukkah is not, it's mentioned, it's alluded to what the Kriyas Torah is, but there's nothing in the Mishnah about Hanukkah. And some say Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was very upset that the Chashmonim felt what they did was wrong. There's a whole debate about Hanukkah. Maybe it didn't turn out so well. They were all corrupted, the Chashmonim. Anyways, okay. What can we do? Everything in our Siddur is current events, right? It's not this ancient history. But getting back to the Vilna Gaon, so he says the Yoatzim are Moshe and Aaron, and the Shoftim are David and Shlomo. And he says Techila, he has a slightly different explanation. Techila means there was nothing before them. Techila means the very, very first, like the creation of the world, although it says Bereshit, but means Techila. And Rishon means there were people before them, but he says Rishon, David and Shlomo were the first judges to judge honestly. Again, I don't know where he's getting this from exactly. And Techila means the very first. So Moshe and Aaron are the first Yoatzim, are the first advisors, the first telling us how to live our life. Whatever it is, I think I think really it's saying a very similar idea. But Hasheeva Shofteinu Rishana, we're praying. I don't want to say, we always like to say it was better. Remember in the good old days, the good old days weren't so good. The persecution of the Jews and the shtetl wasn't always so good. The good old days. So you have to be careful. But here we are, of course, praying for times of justice as defined by the Torah, as expressed by Moshe, Aaron, David, and Shlomo, and that is the only way we will come to the land of Israel. Just let me say one more thing in review. I think that's a very important line, and they should remove from us, here they translate sorrow and troubles. Again, yagon v'anacha. So some say one refers to internal problems in the Jewish people, and one refers to the external problems, or enemies. We always know that we have internal and external. But the role of the judge it's harder to say how they deal with external matters. They seem to be internally focused. But the role of judges and judgment is to remove pain and sorrow. That's the role of a judge. And I'll say we have to pick up on this next week, but we have to discuss the difference between judgment and lifnim mishur before you judge, because justice is strict and justice can be very cruel. And we all know that strict justice, God wanted to create a world of strict justice, and he said that world could not exist. And we have this in the halachic system too. When a judge is bound to do the strict halacha, and then sometimes it's not fair. Sometimes the poor are going to suffer because, the justice is generic and you can't have exceptions. And sometimes people fall through all the cracks. And that is too bad. That's the way a justice system has to work. And then you can have, affirmative action. I don't know, to put up in one, where it's not exactly justice, but we want to rectify some problem. And I'm not getting to the politics if affirmative action is good, but where the idea that sometimes we don't do a justice. That's what I want to pick up next week, the idea of pshara, and that's really how our batei din works. Today, when you go to a beit din, do you go to strict justice or not? And you choose, actually. You can choose when you go to beit din, how do you want the beit din to rule, based on, on strict justice or no? We don't have to follow exactly what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. We can adjust it here and there. So that's what I want to pick up on next week. But you see, the role of the judge is to get away from misery in the world. Okay, just let me, so let's quickly review. We spent a fair bit of time talking about the bracha, Hasheeva, Shofteinu, Karishna. Justice is follows up on ingathering of the exiles, because our ingathering of the exiles is only meaningful. We can only stay in the land of Israel with a strict justice system, a justice system based on honesty and integrity. So we gather in the people. And the first thing you got to do before we build Jerusalem, right? The first bracha, appoint our judges, just like we saw in the Torah. Before we can get the Torah, or we can even get the Torah puts in the story of Yitro, which may have happened later. Torah puts in the story of Yitro, the importance of appointing enough judges, so justice is not delayed, even if you'll get it eventually. That isn't good enough. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, God says, enough time at Har Sinai, now go to the march to the land of Israel. And Moshe says, you know what, that's great, let's march to Israel. Oh, I can't do it on my own. I need judges to help me. That's amazing. In other words, the role of Moshe is to administer justice, and in order to get to the land of Israel, God says, go to the land of Israel. And Moshe says, I don't have enough judges. We can't conquer the land of Israel till we appoint more judges. Unbelievable. And of course, all what people pointed out, all the mitzvot in the Torah, appointing a king, and tzedek, teared up, all these other things. But you see, in the momentous events in Jewish history are dependent on justice. And we discussed, therefore, the reinstitution. A true justice system needs the court to have great power, and for the court to have great power, we need to have real justices. To have real justice is you need real smicha, and smicha has to be continuous, and we've lost that. So what do? We can't deal with all of Jewish law, which is what we find ourselves today. So that's why there have been attempts based on the Rambam. And see, it's interesting. We said the Rambam said nearingly. I'm assuming, I don't know, of course. The Rambam said, this is what I think in my gut. The Rambam understood it's impossible to go on into Jewish life and say we can't have smicha anymore. That's what I was saying. Well, so what are we going to do? Well, that's it. We're going to have to rely on American courts, on Israeli secular courts, because the halacha can't deal with it. That's ridiculous. That cannot be. So the Rambam says it must be. There's a solution. So what's the solution? We all agree. If all the people agree, we can recreate it. Otherwise, the Rambam saying it cannot be. He has no source for it, just his logical source and the historical attempts. And then we discussed exactly we try to decipher instead of just doing the simple explanation. God, return our glory, have honest justice, is like we did, and advise you that it means the same thing. We try to understand different things. A shofet, a yawetz, between man and God, between man and man, having a city of honesty, of tzedek, and a religious city, kiryan ne'emanah, or does it refer to politics and to the judgment, various approaches, what Rishonah and Tchila mean. But okay, those are really our side points. And like I said, next week, please God, we'll pick up on when do we really apply our justice system, and when this is the discussion. This is the discussion in the Gemara Sanhedrin that follows immediately after the giving of smicha. Told you, Rav spent 18 months on a farm. In order to get smicha, you have to speak well. You have to be a good pedagogue, a clear and concise teacher with proper English or Hebrew or Aramaic, whatever language, or Yiddish you're speaking in. Not English isn't so good unless everybody speaks English. I don't know, but it got to be a proper speech. It's right after that. It's in that context that the Gemara has a whole discussion on when we should apply strict justice and when we should have bend sort of our justice system to do what's equitable and fair in the given situation, which may not correspond to what the general halacha is. Okay. Any questions? I see not so many comments here. Okay. Nemanut is trustworthy. Nice. Better than I think religion. Kiryan emunah. Trustworthy. Yes. Okay. Okay. But it refers, emunah generally refers to things between man and God, as opposed to between man and man, right? Nasata benatata be'emunah. I've often explained that beautiful. The first question the Talmud says God will ask us, was your business dealings done be'emunah? It's a strange word. Be'emunah, it should be yashrut. What do you mean emunah? What does emunah have to do with faith? Right? What does it have to do with, or even...
It means
right, so when I say trustworthy, I agree it means trustworthy, but the word emunah always has a connotation, animamin, always has a connotation of faith. And then why I think really what we're saying, I've said many times, that if you want to know if somebody believes in God, see what their business practices are. It's hard to believe in God. It is hard. It's Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai told his students on his deathbed, you should fear God as much as you fear man. It's it's easy to say I believe in God, but it's hard to really believe in God, that God's watching me and cares what I do, and it matters. So now, we believe that, yes, you work hard, but ultimately how much money you're going to make is up to God. Is the stock market going up or down? That's not up to you. You do your work, and God determines this business will be successful, won't be successful. It's beyond our control. So somebody who cheats, you're trying to outsmart God, means you don't believe in God. A person who cheats in business means he doesn't believe in God. So a lot of us are atheists. I mean, I don't want to, it's hard. It's really hard. That's why the first question. That's why nasata v'natata. Of course, it means was it trustworthy, but it means much more than was it trustworthy. It means that your business dealing reflect the fact that you have emunah, that you believe in God. And if you cheat, it means it didn't really reflect that. It means you think you can outsmart God. It's such a powerful idea. It's not just God asks us as the first question, we're honest in business. It's honesty in business. It tells us we believe in God. God's first question is like in the Ten Commandments. Anochi Hashem I'm the Lord your God. Do you believe in God? How do you know if you believe in God? How do you handle your money? Are you willing to give it away? Titztaka. Yaakov Avinu says, God, if you protect me, Aseras Renolach, I'll give you 20%, whatever. Okay, that's a powerful idea. All right, thank you.
Excuse me, if Yoetz deals with politics, how about Yoetz halacha?
Right. So obviously, listen, how we translate in modern terms. Yeah. So, I mean, there is a lot of politics from the Yotzat Halakha. That was, Chana Henkin was very smart, really, how she did, because you can imagine, this is I think it's revolutionary. Some people think it's evolutionary. I mean, many, a lot of us I won't ask when everybody was born, but we're pretty much in the same generation, a lot of us. And, the world, it's unbelievable. If you would have told somebody when I was in high school that they'd have Orthodox women rabbis or even Yotzat Al-Kamar, you think you're out of your mind. It's
right.
And women Talmudic scholars. So it was, and there still is. Yotzat Halacha is more accepted than Maharat. Another thing, it's the one that's most accepted. But there's still plenty rabbis in the modern Orthodox world. I'm not going to name names, but there are plenty rabbis in the modern Orthodox who are some are lukewarm and some are actually negative or actually opposed to it very much. But it was a beautiful ceremony last week, and
Yes, yes.
yeah, it was really beautiful. And Rabbi Alman from Flatbush,
This is my rabbi,
oh, so he was there. He spoke
right?
beautifully. I spoke to
Mhm.
him, and Rabbi Berger get Gedalia Berger, who teaches
Right.
at GPA. He was there. Everybody came in from the States, and to see all these learned women, and believe me, some of these women are tremendous Talmidot Chachamim. That's what it is.
Mhm.
Talmidot
Is there a
Chachamim.
recording of it? Is there a recording
There
of
is
the
a
ceremony?
recording. If you want, send me. I can send you a copy. It was recorded, and lots of people.
Oh,
You
okay.
can watch it online. But
Thank you.
yeah, are the Haredim very much? Yeah, if I haven't spoken to them, if obviously they're against it, and it's an attack on rabbinic authority, and it's
Authority.
blah blah blah. It's not the way it was done. That the woman, but you know what? Like I say, who today goes to a male gynecologist? Like,
That's right.
nobody today would go to a male gynecologist for good reason. So why would anybody show? I mean, I hate to say it like this, but why would anybody show their underwear to like a rabbi? I mean, I don't mean
Mhm.
but that's what some of the halakha they deal. They deal with a lot more than that. But Yoatzara, but the truth of the matter is, you asked me. That's why she called it Yoatzar Halacha. She didn't want to call it Smicha because that would have been opposition.
Politics.
We just advise. We advise people. When we have a real shaila, we discuss with them. But the bottom line is, and you can call me, it's obvious they have more smicha than most men. I mean, how many shilas does your typical rabbi get? I can guarantee you the Yoatzar Halacha get more shilas. It's on a narrower field. That they're getting more shilas, and they don't ask a rabbi every. I know what a shilah doesn't, just very briefly. But if somebody asks me, do I have to say yeah? If I forgot Yalav Yava, do I have to repeat? That's not a shilah. So it's a question you have in halakha. You don't know, so you're asking me what. But the halakha is established. That a shilah means a case where the halakha is not clear. And the posek, are heart transplants allowed? Is a microwave? Can you cook in a microwave on Shabbos? Can you use electricity? I don't know. I can't look up the Gemara in the Shulchan Aruch and tell me if I can use a microwave on Shabbos. So that you need. Rav Moshe Feinstein, you need a posek. You need a posek. That's a shaila. But 98% of questions that people ask rabbis are not shilas. They're just the person doesn't know. I cooked it in a meat pot and the melech and this and that. That's not a shaila. The rabbi looks it up. Here's what to do. A shaila means something new. So the whole issue is really misunderstood. So 90 times what these women are trained, like most rabbis. Most rabbis are incapable of answering a shaila. There are very few rabbis who can, yes, it depends what the issue is. A little bit of judgment. So that's the Yotzar Alachar, just answering questions that people don't know. And when they taka don't know, when it's a complicated question, they really do consult, like anybody would consult. So they're whatever. But anyways, yes, that's a Yotzar Halacha. They advise in halachic matters, whatever that means, But they advise the people who ask them questions, and that's okay. Listen, what did I say? That the Gra says the Yoatzim were Moshe and Aaron. That's what the Gra says. The Vilna Gaon. Yoatzayich Moshe and Aaron. So so they're putting the Yoatzar Halacha in very good company if you quote like that. All right. Anybody else? And then it's almost Shabbos already. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, and have a good
Thank
Shabbos.
you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Be well. Okay. Bye bye.